Why are we here? Why are you here? How many of you are here because of Tom Rainer? And how many of you are here because you heard that you could get a free book if you registered that I had written? My wife, wait a minute, no, she got the free book anyway. Richard Rising, has anybody come because they'd heard of Richard Rising? Anybody come here because they wanted to help make their church better? Yeah. That's why I'm here. And, Richard has a marketing company. I have a marketing company, but this is not about marketing. But 2 years ago, I was asked to speak about marketing, particularly to millennials, at a small pastors' conference here at Wesleyan. And in preparing for that, I had this epiphany that said, churches just do a terrible job marketing. Ironically, we have the best message in the world, and we're not out there shouting it from the rooftops, except for Billy Graham. I'll give him credit. So anyway, for the next year and a half, I whined and moaned and complained and prayed and thought about that, and my wife got tired of hearing me whining about it. And one day, 2 books showed up in my inbox. One was called The Autopsy of a Deceased Church by a guy I'd never heard of called Tom Rainer. And the other one was called Who Moved My Pulpit, which is also by a guy I'd never heard of named Tom Rainer. I started reading those books, and I said, wow, this explains a lot. I understand this now. And then John Check said, hey, guess what? Tom Rainer's coming to speak at Wesleyan next year. I said, well, we need to have a pastor's conference. So we started kind of working on that, and I kept working on this issue of what am I going to do? I kept talking to churches. I said, hey, can I help you market? I'll do it for free. Nobody took me up on that idea. I said, I got to write a book on church marketing. And then I discovered there is a book on church marketing that Richard Rising wrote called Church Marketing 101. And I called him and I said, thank you for writing that book. Because now I don't have to write it. Would you come speak at our conference next year? And he said, yes. And I kept working on the problem, though. And what I finally ended up with was, churches need to do what God said. Love each other. Spread the word. Which is what led me to writing the book called The Greatest Church in the World, because that's what the greatest church in the world is. When I've mentioned this book that's been in the works for over a year now, I mentioned to my pastor, he said, it's about us, right? Our church. And I mentioned it at BSF the other day, and they said, you mean about our church? So, and then a friend said, you mean, is it the Church of Acts? And I said, no, the greatest church in the world is any church. Large, small, black, white, rich, poor, doesn't matter. Any church that loves and spreads the word. And any church can be the greatest church in the world. Doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I've got several things I got to share with you. One of which is the Foundation for Christian Education. And you may have seen in some of the promotional stuff that proceeds from this event go to the Foundation for Christian Education. And it's really supported by the Foundation for Christian Education. The idea is that this foundation will create educational programs like this one, but also educational programs that can be shared through colleges like Wesleyan College with students, traditional students, and adult students. And there's 2 programs in particular that we want to create. One is on marketplace ministry. Billy Graham said, and I'm not quoting exactly, but basically he said the next big move in the Christian world will come through the marketplace. And as a member of C12, which is a peer advisory group of Christian business people, I believe that is very much true. Because as a business owner, we have access to people 5 days a week, and unfortunately, pastors only have access to people pretty much 1 day a week, if they will come that one day. But according to Tom, we don't come that often. So I actually lost my train of thought. I talked myself right out of off the track. So the other program we want to create for foundation through the Foundation for Christian Education is one on sustainable missions, and this is to help teach nonprofit organizations how to be profitable. In other words, to do what they do in a way that creates value and fulfills their mission, so that they don't have to be begging for money all the time, so that they get support because they are acting more like a business. And as you may know, there is a nonprofit track that will take place this afternoon starting at 1 o'clock. It'll actually start in here and finish in the Carlton boardroom out there. And my good friend Chuck Verrett has come in from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we have 2 other folks that are going to speak. And part of that is to help nonprofits learn how to be sustainable and also help to re-energize the nonprofits. We're going to have some great examples on that. That'll be later this afternoon. As Rufus promised, I'm going to talk about revision, which is the process that we use at Carney & Company to help get committees aligned. Who here has to work with committees? Anybody? Who here loves working with their committees? Yes, and how many of your committees are what you would call creative or productive or super strategic? Yeah, I'm not getting a lot of hands there. Yeah, the problem is that committees can be anything but that. They can be very political, they can be unorganized, unfocused, biased, dysfunctional, all those things. And Rufus stole one of my lines. You know what a camel is? It's a horse designed by a committee. I love that line. Rufus, I want it back. Using our process, committees can be a team, an idea-generating team. They can be unified, strategic, and believe it or not, they can actually be creative. So, the question is, do you want your committee, this is probably a look that you're familiar with, a committee that looks like this. What we want is committees that look more like this, that are happy, they look like a team, they look like they're doing something productive. So what I'm going to do is take you through an example of how we use this process and how you can use this at your church or really any committee, any situation where you deal with committees. So imagine we're at a church and one of the leaders says, hey, I've been doing some analysis and our visitation is way, way down. We don't, last week we had like 1 visitor and, the week before that we had 2 and I think, we've had none. We need more visitors. So let's get a committee together. So they bring the committee together and he says, how might we attract more visitors? Now my first tip for you is whenever you have a problem and you get a group of people together, don't say, can we get, how do we get, should we get? You always say, how might we get? I'm telling you, those words are magic. Because when you say, how might we, even to do y'all know what a but person is? The person who you say, hey, I've got an idea, but if you do this and this and this, and they go, yeah, that'd be really cool, but it'll never work. You idiot. Yeah, now, when you say, how might we, they actually start to think, well, maybe there is a way to do that. Maybe it's a possibility. So you phrase your question, how might we? But this gentleman said to this group, how might we get more visitors? And they've got this look that says, have you ever seen this look? They're going, what is he talking about? His visitors is not the problem. So, fact is, if you get 5 people together in a room, or 6 or 12, whatever, you get 5 people together in a room and say, we've got a problem. We need more visitors. What do you think we should do about it? How many answers do you think there'll be? I have 20 down here in the front row. There will be a minimum of 5 different answers, and you're right. It could easily be 7 or 15 or 20 answers because, number one, everybody's got a different perspective, which is why you get the committee together. It's why you want them, because they have a different perspective. But number 2 is they all think that their idea is the best idea. So one person will say, well, no, these visitors are not the problem. Our children's program is terrible. It's a disaster. We have got to fix that, or it won't matter if we bring visitors, because especially if they bring kids. And then the next guy says, well, no, you guys are wrong. We're not going to get visitors until we paint the building. Have you seen it? The paint's peeling. The steeple looks terrible. We've got to paint the building. And the next young lady says very loudly, hey, we need young families. Forget about visitors. We got to get young families. Stop messing around. And then somebody else says, no. We're losing members. That's our problem. And the other person says, well, why don't we just use social media? That's what we need to do. That'll fix everything. No, wait, there's one more. Hey, it's not visitation. It's our attendance is down. Membership is okay, but attendance is terrible. Here's what you do. First thing you do is you take a problem to a committee. Say we need more visitors. Instead of letting everybody jump on this, jump up on and down on the table and telling you what the problems are, just say to everybody, okay, we need more visitors. We know that that's a problem. But what do you all think is our number one problem related to this? If you want to go broader and say what's our number one problem related to the church overall, you can. But don't ask them to talk about it. Just ask them to write it down. Without talking, without any discussion. Just write it down. When we get folks together, we do that. And I say, look, it can be one word, it can be a sentence, but do not make it a book. It's a short thing. What's our problem related to getting visitors? Or what's the problem we need to be focusing on? And then I say, well, now write down your number 2 problem. And when they do that, then I say, now write down your number 3 problem. And then we go around the room, and I just say, I need to know what everybody's problem was. Here's my next big tip to you when you've got a committee together. Just get the facts. Just get them to tell you what they think the problem is. The building needs painting. Don't give me the history of when the last time it was painted or how it was the wrong color or how we use a contractor that we shouldn't have used. Let's just say the building needs painting. We don't want to talk about the details because you don't have time to talk about the details. Next, write all those down. Figure out which ones are like redundant because if you have 15, maybe some of them can be grouped together. Once you get all those down, you turn them into, so everybody's got the problems. There's 7 different problems from 7 different people. Now we turn them into how might we's so that we can actually start thinking about those problems differently. How might we paint the building? How might we attract young families? How might we? We're still not trying to solve them. We're still not trying to talk about them. We just want to state the question, how might we? Okay? I got to tell you one thing to not do when you get a group together. Don't say, hey guys, we got a visitation problem. Let's do some brainstorming. We're going to go in the room and all rules there's no rules. Let's get wild and crazy and let's brainstorm. Do not do that. People hate brainstorming. I loved ideas. I hate brainstorming. Brainstorming as we know it is wrong. I've done some research on it. The guy that invented brainstorming didn't invent it the way we use it now. It's not about going in the room being wild and crazy. It's about what I'm going to show you next. And brainstorming, the man that invented it, it was actually invented by a real person. His name was Alex Osborne, and this was back in the 20s, the 1920s. And he used this process. When he got to the brainstorming step, that was step number 4 in his 6-step process. So if you jump straight to let's go throw some crazy ideas on the wall, you missed 3 important steps, and I'm going to show you those. Well, the first one I just did, let's find some facts. What are our issues? Next, we take one of those problems. How might we attract more visitors? Get you some sticky notes. Get the big ones. Go to Office Depot and get some that are like 4 by 6, at least that big. And you got to do sticky notes because they have to be able to move around. So you put that on a sticky note, and you get some space on the wall, and you write this out. How might we attract more visitors? So that's very tiny type, but I'm telling you that's what that says. How might we attract, except I left out the how might we. Once you get that up there, and actually, since I've already got 7, 8 counting this one, or I think 7 counting this one, go ahead and write all of those on those yellow sticky notes and stick them on the sideboard in the parking lot. Okay? Because they'll find a home in a minute. So you see up there it says why, and down here it says what's stopping. What you want to do before you get to the brainstorming or the problem solution is find more better problems to solve, because one of the problems that businesses, churches, people in general have is they start solving the wrong problem. Or they start solving an old problem, which they solve the same old way they always solved every other problem. You use this process, you will get away from those problems and find the problems that are more important, the problems that are keeping you from being successful. So I say, why do we want to attract more visitors? Why do we? And what's stopping us? So what's stopping us, the answer to that goes below, the answer to why goes above, which is why there's a position like that. So I'm going to say, what's stopping us from attracting more visitors? So you say this to your group. What's stopping us from getting more visitors? Well, one of the answers is already in the parking lot. We are not attracting young families. If we were interesting to young families, if we were doing something that they knew was valuable, they would be coming to us. But right now we're not doing that. We're not attracting them. So that's what's stopping us. And now, just as I used why what's stopping on these other, I can say, why do we want to attract young families? Well, one of the reasons is that will bring more visitors, right? So what is stopping us from attracting young families? Well, that answer is in the parking lot too. Our children's program's kind of messy. Nobody understands that we have kids or that we take good care of them or that they learn anything valuable, whatever that reason is. So now we say, well, how might we improve the children's program? Why do we want to do that? So we can attract young families. Why do we want to do that? So we can attract more visitors. So what else is stopping us from attracting young families? Well, that one's in the parking lot also. We are not using social media. So that's where how might we use social media goes. Understand, we're not trying to solve any of these problems yet. We're still just looking for problems to solve. So now, I'm going to go, why do we want to attract young families? Well, there's a really good reason to attract young families. Because young families implies, I'm sure it actually means millennials. And y'all know millennials travel in packs. So if you get some young families, they're going to bring their friends. And that's what that one says. That was not in the parking lot. That's a new answer to a different problem. So how might we get millennials to bring their friends? Because why do we want to do that? Well, that'll bring more visitors, right? And as Tom Rainer said, when a person brings a person, they're more likely to stay, more likely to go, more likely to be engaged. So, why do we want to attract more visitors? Let's take up from there. Well, more visitors should mean more members. Now, I hope you all heard what Richard was saying, because if you don't do the things that he said to do, some of this stuff won't matter. And maybe some of these questions will end up getting back to some of the fundamentals that Richard talked about. So why do we want to attract more members, more visitors? So we can get more members. Why else do we want to attract more members? Oh, wait, no, it's what's stopping us from getting more members. Well, the fact is, we're actually losing members. We're losing members. Well, that sounds like a big problem. So how might we stop losing members? That sounds like that might even be more important than the children's program. I don't know. So what's stopping us from losing members? Okay? Remember, what's stopping us? Why do we say, what's stopping us from losing members? Well, this is a good one. People are not engaged. They're not involved in what we're doing. We don't have anything meaningful for them to get involved with. So how might we get people engaged? Well, what's stopping us from getting people engaged? Well, one of the things is we're not really involved in the community, y'all. You know, we come here, you know, a lot of people don't even live in this area. So how might we get involved in the community becomes a problem. Why do we want to do that? So we get our people engaged. Why do we want to do that? So they'll stop going away from us. Why do we want to do that? So we'll have more members. You starting to see how this works? Why do we want to get people engaged? It'll improve attendance. It'll improve attendance. That solves one of those problems that came up in the original discussion. It came from the parking lot. Next, why do we want to get more members? One of the reasons is we may have enough income then to actually improve our facilities, paint the building, do some of that stuff. Why else do we want to get more members? Well, we can reach more people with the gospel. One thing I want you to notice now, as you go higher and ask why, you get more strategic. You actually get closer to heaven. As you go lower, you get more in the weeds. You get more into tactical stuff, but more of the to-dos. So why do we want to get more members? We reach more people with the gospel. Why else do we want to get more members? Well, it could help grow our church. Growing our church should be a good thing. So how might we grow our church? Why do we want to grow our church? Why do we want to reach more people with the gospel? Well, that'll help us fulfill the Great Commission. Now, there's lots of different answers to all of these questions, and they only matter as they relate to your church. So don't take any of this back to your church, even if you have some of these problems. You can take one of these problems back and work this through with your folks. But I promise you, if you go high enough, you will find yourself closer to heaven if you work through these problems. But now let's say we tell the group, okay, we've worked on this for an hour, so let's stop here. Now remember, people have been presenting facts, answering questions, and we just turn them into how might we's and stick them on the board without talking about them. Because if you let somebody talk about a problem, they will talk about it forever. Don't let them do it until in a minute. Now, I've identified, there's 10 or 12 problems here. All the way from improving the children's program, to painting the building, to growing the church, to getting involved in the community. All different problems. I don't care how busy your church is, how big your church is, how many people you got involved, you cannot tackle all of these problems at the same time. You got to pick one or two. That's the next step. You've got 7 people in the room. Give everybody a colored dot. A little sheet of colored dots you can get from Office Depot. And say, okay, y'all see these problems up here. You're blue, you're yellow, you're green. Go pick the top 2 that you personally believe are the most important. We're not talking about it, just put a dot on the problems that you think are the most important. If you feel really strongly about it, pick 3. But, you're either going to have 14 or somewhere, around 15 or 20 dots by the time it's all done. And what will always happen is 2 of these things will become clear to the group that, it's more important than the others. And some are less important. So you'll end up with, 3 or 4 dots on this one, no dots on this one, 5 dots on this one. Well, now you've actually got some priority going on. Now you go, and anything that has a dot on it, you say, Jeff, you're green. Why'd you pick that? And Jeff says, well, I picked that because this and this and this. Here's one thing that's real important. When I put a dot on something, I know exactly why I did it. And because I'm so very smart, I'm assuming that everybody thinks exactly like I do. Until Jeff starts telling me why he put the dot on there. And his idea is totally different than mine. Well, guess what? Now I've learned something to do. I have a different perspective on that. And when I explain why I did it, then he has a different perspective. And we have even a better reason to believe that that's an important problem to solve. So everybody that's placed a dot on something talks about why they did it. Now we all understand each other. And now guess what? This thing here about, let's go with use social media. Somebody wanted to talk about that for 20 minutes, but nobody put a dot on it. Well, we just saved 20 minutes because since nobody put a dot on it, we don't have to talk about it. That's why you save your conversation until later. So now you've got 5 dots here and 3 dots there and 2 dots there. And you say to the group, okay, what do you think is the most important thing that we tackle? And everybody's going to say, well, the one with 5 dots looks like a pretty big deal to me. Say, well, okay, let's work on that. Well, what about the one with 3 dots? Okay, well, let's try that one too. So you take those aside and then you go, all right, we want to get more involved in the community. There's 5 dots on that. Everybody thinks that's a good thing. We hadn't been involved for 20 years. Put that up on the board. Now you start brainstorming. How might we get involved with the community? How might we be better at reaching people through our activities in the community? You work to solve that problem. Now, all these other problems are still problems. You get to those later. You can't solve them all at once. Pick the ones that are most important, the 1 or 2 that you really can work on. Come up with some ideas, and now it's a great time to be wild and crazy. That's where great ideas come from. Albert Einstein said, if at first your idea is not absolutely absurd, then there's no hope for it. So, if everybody loves your idea, it's probably not a good idea because it's already been done. And it didn't work and nobody liked it or whatever. Pick ideas that are a little different and then go after them. Make a list of things you might do. Do a little work on that. Get the committee working and focused on that one thing. Make an action plan, Project Management 101. Assign tasks, assign deadlines, and go after the project. Cost me $1 million to learn that whole program. I just gave it to you in 15 minutes. I hope you... So here's what you do. Start with a problem. You can start with almost any problem because you will end up way different than where you started. So identify more problems by asking why, what's stopping us. Always ask how might we. Select a problem to work on based on that DOT system and then get to work. That's it. That's it. I already talked to you about this one. Oh man, I'm 10 minutes overdue to be done. So I tell you what, I'm gonna wrap up quickly because we've got a great message coming up after me. Some of you actually did sign up when you were offered this free book for becoming a participant in our ReNew18. I told you I was challenged to do something, and this was what it ended up being, the greatest church in the world. I gave you a little bit of background on it. It's a fictional story about a young pastor who's been 6.5 years out of the seminary. He's failed at 2 churches, and he's about to give up. Anybody ever been anywhere close to that? He doesn't know what he's going to do. 347 miles from home, he stumbles into a little town. Saturday night, streets are rolled up, it's dark. He goes into this little church that happens to be open on Saturday night, and he starts to pray, starts to quit. And before he says, I quit, older pastor comes up and starts talking to him and says, what's going on here? They talk, and over the next several days, he learns that this little bitty church in this little bitty nothing town is actually a thriving, great church. And he learns the principles that made that church the greatest church in the world in that spot. And you'll have to read the rest of the story to get the rest of the story. And you can, because the book tomorrow will be available for free on Amazon to download to your Kindle. And if you have a phone, and if you have a computer, if you have an iPad, you have a Kindle. So all you have to do is go to Amazon, download it. It's free. You can read it in an hour and a half. It's a short little story. Gotten some nice reviews from some people that have read it, and I'd love to get some feedback from you. I am not a church operations expert. This is not about church operations. I couldn't tell you the difference in one doctrine and another. It's not about doctrine. It's just some principles that I've learned from Tom Rayner and Richard Rising and Mark Patterson and Rick Warren, just from reading and watching and listening. I never thought I would write a book about church, but I didn't have any choice in it, to tell you the truth. So I want to share that with you. If any of you say, I absolutely am not going to read it on a Kindle, the hard copies are coming in about a week or so. It just went live on Kindle this morning at 1 a.m. That's how close we are on the wire. Just let me know when we get the hard copies in. We'll work it out so you can get one. And I look forward to hearing from you. We are going to have time for some Q&A later this afternoon after John checked. So if you have questions for Richard or me or Robert or anybody else that you're going to hear today, save them up. We also will be breaking for lunch. Well, we are now officially on church time, y'all. We're running a little bit behind. So I thank you for your attention this morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for being here. This is what the book looks like in real. This is the proof version. I think I've got to get off the stage because my time is running out. It's time now for Richard Joyner. Thank you very much.